Today, I'm going to tap into my experience with the back-to-back hurricanes where I live and provide some solid tips and advice for anyone who might come up against hurricanes in the future. Welcome to this episode of the Coleman Nation. Let's go. My wife and I, we moved here back in 2020, just right at the very early stage of the pandemic. And it's always been a kind of a funny conversation to have with people that are from California moving to Florida, because it inevitably winds up coming up to the conversation of, what do you prefer? Like there's some sort of a preference to earthquakes or hurricanes. And the people in California will be like, man, hurricanes are a few seconds. Earthquakes are a few seconds. You just kind of blast through them and then you're done with them. But, and people in Florida are like, no way, man, I would never want to know that. And they say, oh, hurricanes are way better. Why? Because they're coming. You have lots of time to prepare. Well, having lived through both, I will tell you that both of them are terrible. We went through the earthquakes in the 90s in Southern California, and now I've had a chance to live through multiple hurricanes, here in Florida, live in the Tampa Clearwater area. And so I'm going to tell you this right now. This is the story of the back-to-back hurricanes of Helene and Milton that we just went through. So for Aileen, I was out of town actually in Huntington Beach, California, when Aileen came through, and it hit with a very, very, fast and furious intensity. I was supposed to be back the day before it hit, but they closed all the airports. So I was literally, checking my phone, on the phone with the airports, and with the airlines, trying to figure out a way to get home. And I thought that I was going to be okay to be able to get back here ahead of the, the hurricane. But there was just no way I couldn't get home. So I just stayed in close communication with my wife, who was at home with my, our baby daughter. And I had friends who were nearby who could mobilize to assist if anything really crazy happened. So in addition to, my wife and baby being home, we had an injured family member who could not move. So for both hurricanes, unless they were going to say, we're sending in, people to come get you right now because this thing is going to completely nuke you, we were going to have to stay put. It was just a physical impossibility to move one of our family members who had just sort of an immobilizing injury. So we were out of the flood zone. So that was good news. And I just got to tell you, every day I pray for the people that, are that were in harm's way in both of these, absolute catastrophes, these disasters. In fact, I just found out today that, we're many weeks on the other side of these hurricanes, and there are still people that are displaced in North Carolina. Our prayers go out to them. We've done donations to them, in ways that we've been able to. But, these are serious matters. And this isn't a lighthearted episode by any means, but, I'm going to tell you some of the stories that of us going through, the experience. But thankfully, again, we live outside of the flood zone. We're far away, at least a couple miles away from bodies of water. We're so much so that we didn't even get assigned a number. But I will tell you that it was really scary. So I live in Clearwater, which is serviced by the Tampa airport, which was closed. So I had to fly into Orlando from Huntington Beach, rent a car, and then drive all the way back from Orlando to Clearwater. So we got in the car and drove back, and the weather was relentless and whatnot. But we finally got home. And by the time they got there, nothing had really happened. And this was during Helene. Okay, so we didn't have a loss of power. We didn't have any flooding. There wasn't any destruction to speak of. But many of our friends, some of my best friends from childhood, had their houses completely nuked because they lived near the beach. Now, we've been through storms like Helene before, but the storm surges were what's tough. Those things were brutal, just tons of water coming. I mean, I had friends whose houses 4 to 6 feet of water filling up their living rooms. You know what I mean? We're just so thankful for the community that was able to respond and help, to be able to get them on the other side of it. I had, one of the physical therapy center, that I go to just for, working kinks out and stuff like that. Their whole place was completely destroyed, but rebuilt within a couple of days. The roof was gone. You'd see this water would just roll into your neighborhood, and there was nothing that you could do. So at my house, again, we were fortunate that this didn't happen to us, but we're also fortunate that during Aileen, we did not lose power. But then after Aileen, I wasn't even home for a week, and then we had Milton bearing down on us. I had to figure out what to do. Now, having been from California, I've only been in Florida for a few years. And in the last few years, we had Hurricane Ian, but that pretty much missed us. We had some bad tropical storms, some of which were upgraded to a Category 1 hurricane, but nothing like Milton, which was, at the time was a Category 5, and dissipated a lot when it hit land. But I was really, really terrified that something was, gonna happen that was going to be well beyond our control. And the amount of energy that dissipated as it hit land was just incredible. I mean, the fact that it hit land and, you could see it just being downgraded by the minute. We just count ourselves very, very fortunate. I'm going to tell you this right now, whatever the case may be, whether it was just, God's good fortune or the Indian burial grounds or a combination of the two, and, the strong mindset of the locals. I will tell you this right now, that we were very, very thankful that we were not, pummeled as much as other areas when it did hit land. So, I'm an amateur prepper, and I'd done some preparation ahead of time. I had enough stuff to either bug in or bug out, depending on the situation. We could bug in for a number of weeks if we needed to. We could bug out within a couple of hours. I was fairly well prepared with communication, clothing, various supplies, that one would need in a semi-apocalyptic situation. So we were pretty ready, as it were. But a hurricane is a unique type of disaster, meaning you can have some prediction on it. It's coming and it's changing minute by minute. Days earlier, Milton was the hardest storm that's ever hit the planet. 180 mile per hour winds was what they were saying. One of the biggest in recorded history. It was headed straight for Tampa. So we pretty much thought we were toast. And then they were saying it would lose momentum when it hit, which it did. It missed us, but we sure got horrendous wind and rain. Now, I had a little bit of a situation with flooding, which fortunately didn't get into the house. Our house is slightly more elevated than, one of our neighbors, and water from our property is supposed to go down across their property and into the next property and then into the wash, which was specifically prepared in our neighborhood for this type of flooding. But the builder of our house had put up this fence, between us that, and we created a paver stone walkway that we'd installed, and it started pooling this giant pool of water, and this is what was basically raising up and sort of rolling towards our house. So midnight on the night of, Hurricane Milton, as it was hitting, at its absolute peak, it was 100+ mile per hour winds. My yard was filled with water up to my knee. It had nowhere to go. So at midnight, thank goodness for my neighbors. And this is one of the things that you've got to have is you got to have a good relationship with your neighbors. And then you have to have a great, sort of a social structure that you can fall back on, whether it's a church group, close friends nearby. It was just crazy. So I had a little, drill bit, sort of a standard, 1/2-inch drill bit. And so I was trying to drill out this hole in our fence. And it was laughable, but thank goodness my neighbor, he had an 1.5-inch boring bit. And so he wound up coming in, and that, created even more pressure relief. But then my other neighbor, he had a 4-inch circular bit, and it was awesome. So we cut a hole in the fence at, just after midnight, maybe around 1 o'clock in the morning. And then all the water that had pooled up just shot into the path heading into the wash behind our house. And that pretty much saved us from flooding. I mean, we're talking like about that much, like maybe a 1/2 inch from it coming into our house. And that was pretty scary. So being out there in 100-mile-an-hour winds, knee deep in water, drilling out a fence to alleviate the pressure. Well, there was debris flying all over the place, and it was really, really crazy. I know that physically working out can be uncomfortable, especially if you're starting out kind of out of shape. You don't know what to do and you don't know where to go. You need to have an environment where you can ask questions, where people are friendly and don't make you feel stupid or small. All of these are reasons why I go to today's sponsor, Rift Fitness. They've got a ton of equipment. They provide oxygen therapies, red light therapies, cold plunges. They have a dry sauna, infrared sauna, and an outdoor wet sauna. They've got on-call trainers who are there to assist you and give you direction. They have everything that you need. Rift has 2 locations here in Clearwater and will be expanding some more into the Tampa, Clearwater, St. Pete area. So if you're in the greater Clearwater area and looking to get in shape in the new year, check out Rift Fitness. Let him know that I sent you and you'll get some sort of discount. Just ask for Ben. He'll take care of you. You guys are awesome and have fun at Rift. So the next day, nothing really had happened. Again, we were very fortunate. I do not, again, take this lightly, but our internet went down a bunch of times. It was spotty over the next couple of days, and then cell service was really spotty. Everything went from 5G to 4G like overnight, right? And so there was 1 bar of 4G for like a week, so I could only get text messages where we lived. It was just, there was no internet. And so for anybody that was trying to text me or get a hold of me during that hurricane and you're like, how come he's not answering? I know that he's there. I apologize. We were on 4G, 1 bar, very difficult to communicate, but it did eventually resolve. So we had power this is the funny thing that happened. We had power for the first 2 days of the storm. And we foolishly thought, hey, we're on the other side of it. But then on Friday, so the storm hit on Wednesday, all day Thursday, all day Friday, everything was fine. But then on Friday night, a tree at one of our neighbors' houses, a few houses down, knocked out all the power lines. And so the power company, just think about it, they had hundreds, if not, hundreds and hundreds of people that were out, linesmen, fixing the power lines. And again, I am very, very thankful for the job that those guys did. On Wednesday morning, in anticipation, there was a power line that went down before the hurricane hit. We had like 10 trucks in our front yard, like fixing that thing. It was fixed in like minutes. It was awesome to see because all these guys were waiting around for the big storm to hit, but then afterwards when it hit, they were like, it's going to be days for us to come back out and fix the, this one power line. So they were just jammed up. The linesmen had been working for 72 hours straight by that time, just trying to get power restored all over the place. We were told that we probably weren't going to have power until Tuesday. This was Friday evening. So the power was out Saturday, Sunday, and most of Monday. And then the power eventually wound up coming on Monday night. So I had to get the gas powered generator out. This was the first time that I'd put a generator on since I lived in New Hampshire 25 years earlier. So I lived on a farm. We had a little generator. It was almost the same as the one that we have here. This is obviously a little bit more modern, but that was the last time that I'd had to run a generator was back then. And, we didn't really have generators in Southern California. Sure, we had situations with the rolling blackouts because of, just the terrible way that state is run from time to time, but not long enough to be able to, have the necessity for a generator. So anyway, that's pretty much what had happened, and the extent of it is, and we had that generator going, and it was really funny because we put our generator up and then we had our neighbors coming over, and it was a chance for me to reciprocate, and they were like, hey, can we plug in, our kids have to do their homework. Can we plug in our laptops? Can we charge our phones? Can we, come in? And so it was like our whole community got together and we were like, kind of cooking meals for each other, making sure everyone had food, going around, making sure that everyone was doing okay. And so I think that that's one of the really big reasons why, strong community is important. So I'll just tell you that's pretty much the end of that story. And I discussed with you what, confronted today, what would I do in hindsight in the same circumstances? And hopefully these tips will help anyone who encounters a similar situation so they can get a step ahead. So number one, and, they're very expensive, but if I had the presence of mind to do this years ago, when it was brought to my attention, I would have gotten a Generac whole house generator, that's a gas powered generator. We had 2, I think, in our neighborhood, and they run on natural gas. So we have a natural gas line, which is kind of weird for a Florida neighborhood. So there's not a lot of natural gas that's piped into neighborhoods and whatnot, but we did. And so it was kind of told, hey, you should get a long time, like years ago, they said, get a Generac, or one of those full house generators that just switches on in the event of a power outage. And I was like, yeah, whatever. I don't think that's going to be a big deal. And so, but they hook these generators up to the natural gas line. And then the second it goes, boom, the gas flips on and you have electricity. Like I said, a couple of people had those, nothing happened to them. When the power is out, you have a baby, you don't know when it's going to come back on. There are a huge number of things that you have to do in your house. There's unloading the fridge, but not keeping it open too long, and freezing ice bags and doing all this other stuff. All of that is eliminated if you have a Generac or something comparable. And that would be the ideal situation. Obviously, they can be kind of pricey. I would have, like I said, when we originally got our house, that would have been something like, hey, let's get this thing installed. And it's something definitely, if we wind up building in the future, that's something we're going to look at. But, some people recommended a Tesla battery tied in the solar system on the house. And that sounds pretty good. But, we had back-to-back hurricanes, and I had one neighbor whose house was running on batteries. And because it was cloudy for a whole week, we're like, how are you guys faring? They're like, our batteries didn't get a chance to charge, And so if you get hit one and it's cloudy all week and they don't have a chance to charge up before the second one hit, he was kind of out of power when everybody else got hit as well, So it was like by the time the second one hit, if your batteries don't have a chance to charge, you might be in a little bit of a pickle, right? But, to me, I guess the best bang for your buck would be a Generac natural gas generator. But, and it was funny because the quote that we got a long time ago was half of what it would be today, just because of inflation. So that inflation working against your dollars is really real. Like we got the same quote, same exact generator, and literally it was almost double from when we had originally got it quoted. So there are also gasoline and propane generators, which are less expensive, but not as effective. So if you get one of those, you should get, a couple 5-gallon tanks. Propane is a better option because you can't store 5-gallon tanks of gasoline for more than a month or two, but you can store propane indefinitely. So depending on how much, throughput you're putting on your generator, a tank should last a day or a day and a half. One of my neighbors has a propane generator, which is a little bit quieter than a gasoline generator. There are also ones called inverter generators, which are very, very quiet. And, I was like, man, if I had even understood any of this stuff, I would have gone and gotten a inverter generator like right away. That would have been the thing that I should have gotten. But we had a traditional, regular, sort of loud gasoline generator, and it worked great. But there were long lines to be able to get gasoline, which was crazy. I'd never really experienced anything like that. So I went to Costco to try and get gas, and there was a line half a mile long just to get in the parking lot. There was a sudden gasoline shortage because they shut down the port in Tampa because of the storm, and gas comes in on those ships. The ships couldn't unload, and so the gas stations couldn't get refilled. And so this Costco, which obviously they have tremendous reserves, I was looking at it, and I think that the lines were over 3 hours long just to be able to get a little bit of gas, right? So when I ran into that long line at Costco, I jumped back on the road and found another gas station, which was pretty quick. It was like literally, I just came out of the Costco, drove down Gulf to Bay, which is one of the streets here, and there was a newer gas station, which may be the reason why it wasn't super filled, with people. But we filled up after about 10 minutes in line, and we got about 15 gallons to take back to the house. So one of the things that I saw there, and you may not have this choice at every gas station, was that they had one hose marked no ethanol. A lesson I learned from a great video on YouTube is that ethanol is apparently super corrosive. Today's cars are built so that ethanol doesn't harm your engine, but most of these generators are not like that. They've got hoses, they've got rubber, they've got sealed gaskets and stuff that will deteriorate. So in the course of a year, your whole generator will deteriorate with ethanol. Some gas stations, if you have the time to seek them out, will have pure unleaded fuel with no ethanol. The fuel will degrade though, so you can't keep it for too long. But if you can get that for your generators, 100%, that's the fuel to get, is the no ethanol unleaded. Okay. So 5 gallons of gas in our generator would run us for about 15 hours. That includes 2 refrigerators, charging a bunch of lights, phones and laptops. We let our neighbors come over and plug in their devices too. So by the way, here's a tip for obtaining gasoline when it's suddenly hard to get. Nobody was going to the little local gas stations. When I went to fill up our cars, I didn't go to the big Shell station that was on the main thoroughfare near our house. I went to a corner Shell station that was on a tiny little back road that hardly anyone ever goes to. There was no line and tons of gas. I filled up our cars ahead of the storm. After the storm, though, those guys were out of gas almost instantaneously like everyone else. The next important thing when you have no power is lights. Candles and matches are always the old standby. We went to Costco and got these little round puck lights. They look like little hockey pucks. On a single charge, they last about 15 hours. They have motion sensors, so they're off until you walk into a room. So they can last up to 36 hours if they're used minimally. And they were $12 for 2 of them. So everyone in the house got one that they could carry with them around the house. So that worked kind of like, our modern day candle. And those would, like I said, last anywhere from 12 to 36 hours, depending on how much we were using them. And then we had some that were in various spots in the house. They're USB-C, so we could charge them, with power banks. So we bought some budget power banks, and those were also totally awesome. Still actually using them to this day. Then having a bunch of flashlights ready to go was really important. We had a lot of AAA batteries. In addition to the puck lights, everyone got a couple of flashlights to utilize around the house. So that took care of the lighting. We did have candles and matches as a last resort, but as it turns out, we didn't really need them. The next important thing for Florida is air conditioning. A very fortunate situation with Milton was that a huge cold front came in right on the heels of the hurricane. As soon as the hurricane left, the temperature dropped from around 85 degrees with absolutely horrid Florida humidity down to the mid 60s. Okay, so we had an over 20-degree temperature drop overnight. If it had stayed in the mid 80s at night with like a 90% humidity, we would have just baked. So we've been in situations where our AC went out. Like one time they needed to do some maintenance and was out for a few hours, another time for a couple of days. So I'd gone to Home Depot and picked up a few little air conditioning units on, wheels for about $300 each. And they hook up to the windows, and brought the temperature down maybe 4 or 5 degrees. So even though it was only in the 60s or 70s, it was non-moving air. So you don't realize how much air conditioning does for you. So having those in the house increase the quality of life tremendously. If you can afford like one of those wall units, which are a couple $100, we actually got one. The one unit that we bought was like one of those stand-up units, and you kind of hook the hose to a door or whatever, and it's set up very, very quickly, and we could run it on the generator. But it did bring it down by a couple of degrees. If you're sitting in that room, it was actually very, very pleasant. So another important factor in this kind of a crisis is food and water. We were fortunate because we kept the refrigerators closed. Those suckers are giant ice chests. They'll keep your stuff cold for a good day if you're not opening it up all day. Once I had a chance to turn on the generator, the refrigerators ran and we didn't have to worry about it. For the most part, we didn't really have any problems with food. The biggest thing was being able to prepare baby formula. So we need to be able to boil water, which we could do on the stove, but for water, we have a filtration system in the house so we can have, clean water that is accessible to us. But even still, about 20 gallons of purified water stored in glass containers if we needed it. I have an emergency food for really extended emergencies, high calorie military rations, but we didn't have to bust into any of that. It was good to know that it was there though. The next point is looting. I heard from various reports from Georgia and North Carolina, especially, that there were problems of looting during the hurricanes. It did not happen in Florida, though, as far as I heard. My neighborhood is particularly famous for being, shall we say, Second Amendment conscious. In my neighborhood, we had some incidents. My neighbors were probably laughing like crazy, but it was very serious at the time. Anyways. Let me just put it this way. My neighborhood is probably not one that you want to break into, right? But they're very, very Second Amendment conscious. Now, Sheriff Grady Judd in the next county over from us, he talks about how looting will not be tolerated. He says if the residents put looters down, and that's gentle language, if they're put down, it saves law enforcement a lot of time wasted in court. So you can kind of imagine the mentality that goes around here. So whether you agree with that or not, that's completely up to you. But the fact is that, if you're a looter, you definitely don't want to be punching around in Florida homes in the middle of a hurricane looking for stuff. It's probably not going to end well for you. So it's really important to keep your weapons clean and accessible with lots of ammo. Obviously, you must have all safety protocols completely engaged. I might want to say that again, and you want to have your pews very well cleaned and ready to go. I don't know if I'm going to get censored for that one, but you get the point. So next, you got to know where you're going to go. We were not evacuated, but just a few blocks over in every direction. A lot of people were. Some zones were completely evacuated. They couldn't stay in their homes. Right. And so you got to know your zone and be prepared with your bug out bag. What are you taking with you? If you have to get out of your house quickly, what will you throw in a bag? Or what bag do you have that's prepared? You just grab that, throw your family in a car and drive away. A big, heavy concrete school across the street from us serves as a shelter, and their parking lot was jam packed. That gym was full. It was probably an absolute madhouse as a shelter. And then there were some hotels, our church had down the street that were very well prepared with generators. So many people went to Tropicana Field, which, has a roof, but the roof blew off in the middle of the hurricane. People were safe. Nobody got hurt. But number one, it's scary. And number two, now you're wet, right? And so they're going to take the whole year rebuilding that thing. And, so that was pretty nuts. But a lot of hotels were massively booked or overbooked. These events are legitimately scary. These are real concerns. So I would tell you, right, know your local place of where you're going to bug out if you need to get somewhere quickly. You can also head for someplace far away if you have time. We had a bunch of friends who went up to Odessa and Brooksville, which is north of here. They got, missed almost completely. We had other friends that went to Alabama, went to Georgia. Everyone just got out as fast as they could. I remember that in Hurricane Ian, one of my friends got out and went to Orlando, and then it turned and left Clearwater alone and went directly for Orlando, and so we were kind of laughing about that. But, to get really clear, they'll let you know where it's, totally out of harm's way. And so you can't totally tell where the hurricane is going to go. You just have to cross your fingers that it doesn't chase you down, like my friends that left Tampa and went to Orlando. That's going to happen. That's pretty much it. But believe it or not, I believe, like many others, that there are two things that keep Tampa Bay safe. First is the huge Indian burial ground, the Tocobaga people in Safety Harbor, the Tocobaga people in Safety Harbor right across the bay from Tampa. It said that this was the burial ground that wards away storms, and that's why we haven't had any significant storms make landfall here in over 100 years. So to those Indians, I thank them very much. Right, this last one wrecked a bunch of stuff in Tampa Bay, but at the same time, it was not nearly as bad as it could have been. The other credit we give for storms missing us is sacrifices to the Brightline train. It's a train that provides premier service from Miami to Orlando. You can find an Instagram account called Florida Man, which keeps track of people who, my condolences, but they pass away because of that train. It's claimed that it just eats people alive. It actually, hits these people. But they're saying that the combination of Indian burial grounds and the sacrifice of the Brightline train, that's what keeps Tampa Bay safe. So the last point of my recommendations would be to get to know your neighbors ahead of time. Like I said, we're really open with our neighbors. Several houses didn't have any electricity. We told them, hey, if you need some gas, you need to plug in your devices, feel free to come to our house. I believe, you've heard me talk about it before, golden rule, treat others how you'd want to be treated. That was good because we got a couple of meals cooked for us. We know our neighbors love them and they're awesome people. They help us out. We help them out, but obviously things didn't escalate into complete and total apocalypse, and we have a contingency plan for that. We've got farmland in Central Florida if we need to bust it too, and other friends that are local if, things really got serious. But thankfully, things didn't get that serious, at least for us where we are here. So anyways, the whole point is you got to prepare, but that should do it. If there's anything that you think I missed, throw it in the comments. Hurricane season is over now, but the next time a hurricane comes up, someone might jump on and watch this episode and hopefully get some good tips. So make sure you leave any that I might have left out. Make sure you hit the like and subscribe buttons above, and also make sure you turn on notifications so you're the first to hear about all the great new stuff we're releasing on this channel. Elsewhere, we're on all the podcast platforms and the rest of social media, Instagram, TikTok, and X. Beyond that, stay safe. If you're watching this because you're heading into another hurricane, make sure to check the comments. We appreciate you. Thanks for tuning in on this episode of Coleman Nation. We'll see you the next time. Take care, everybody. Stay safe. Bye.